I'm using the tarot to focus my thinking, and any esoteric modeling that we do really is best seen in that way rather than the truth being revealed to us. The truth is a subjective experience. You can use whatever model you find works for you. It needs to be consistent. It needs to check out. So I'm suggesting that there are 7 groups of 3 tarot cards. We come to these 3 that I'm studying now are the Path of Awareness. This relates to the Elven Star system. I've looked already in this batch of 3 tarot cards at the Tower and also the Star. So the Tower is when everything wrong about your life comes crashing down and you're brought to the lowest point, that beneath which you cannot sink. And it's not what people want, but it's actually really useful afterwards, because you know that whatever happens, that's the worst it gets. And that just erases so much anxiety. We have the capacity to imagine far worse things happening to us than have happened so far. And the Tower just takes you down to the very basics. And if you get up again, it feels good, it feels strong. And this gives you a kind of faith that the Star helps you to understand where light is known to be, the substance of everything. Everything physical, everything that you feel and think, everything is light. In other words, we're all made of the same stuff, and we are all one, and you get to come to that understanding because in some way you see it or you know it. Sometimes these additional facilities of consciousness that have to do with the path of awareness are given words like seeing the light and seeing as understanding something and so on. But it's not really necessarily a visual thing, it's a metaphor. And some of us see, some people can actually see auras and see situations and see light, and other people just feel it. And some people don't even have a body feeling, they just know it. That might be called claircognizance as opposed to clairvoyance. So be careful with these metaphors that we're using, not to get too literal about them. Now, in the third principle, when we're looking at the principle of freedom, evolution, and creativity as being how we understand the threeness of any group of tarot cards. So the path of awareness began with the liberation that the Tower brings. We're liberated from everything that didn't work and wasn't right. We didn't want to be liberated, but we were. So that freedom sometimes is forced upon us. In the Star, we have evolution. And the evolutionary sense that we're getting is that our perceptual capacity, our ability to know what's going on a deeper level, is brought into the next dimension of consciousness. We go up a level. And when we come to the Moon, the third in this series, we're discussing creativity. And we're not looking at making nice pictures or songwriting. We're talking about the fact that we make it all up. Perception is our artwork. How we perceive, what we perceive, this is our artwork. This is our creativity. We create through perception. What we choose to look at is really important, where we focus our attention. If we're looking at all of the problems in the world, that sends out an invitation to those problems to come to you. You think about what you do with your attention. If you look at someone, they're invited to come and talk to you at a party or something. You look at someone, eventually you'll end up talking to them, probably, or they'll walk away because they don't want you to look at them. But it will set up a magnetism we've experienced this really clearly. We might not have come to understand what we're experiencing. But attention sets up a magnetism that actually pulls things towards you to some extent. It might then lead to repulsion in a process called, with some Greek word that I always forget, ananthropia or something. Can't remember the word. The idea that in the extreme forms, things flip to their opposites. But what basically we're saying is that that which you give your attention to is attracted to you. Some people give their attention to the dark, some to the light. Most people a bit of both. And very few people hold their attention on one thing, let alone that thing being the light. And this is the real training. We have to develop awareness through training and experience. Those are the two qualities that we need to focus on if we want to develop in awareness. We need experience. Concepts, teachings, theoretical stuff, it's all very well and good to help us understand what we're experiencing. But until we've actually experienced something, first of all, we won't believe it in the same way. If we know something is true, it's because we've experienced it. Secondly, we won't ever know how it feels and what it's like in the physical body without the proper physical experience. And that rooting of a conceptual idea into experience is what brings knowledge. Without experience and what you know, you don't know, not really. So, through experience, through guidance also, we come to a higher level of awareness. Now, this isn't only in the form of another person who's guiding you. The guidance aspect of this comes through your life experiences. So, in other words, experience itself is a kind of guide, but only if you perceive it properly. And so the first thing we have to do is to know this, that when we're perceiving something as shadowy and dark and fearsome and so on, that's an error of perception. That's the feedback that we're getting, that we're actually in error. Life is a trial and error process. We try whatever creative urges we have to express our freedom and thereby evolve. That's the process that we're going through. So we try things out. The feedback is the reflection of self in the world. And we see why the moon is in this very exalted state in the tarot. A position of great importance is right near the end. You know, we come to this. If we see the tarot as a life journey, it begins with the magician. That's what the fool basically is, the soul incarnating. And then the first life test is the magician. In other words, we have to get on top of life and learn the skills of how it all works to start the journey. That's the beginning of it, not the end. And here we come to a very much later stage in the tarot process, indicating the life journey, where the moon's mystery is made known to us. And the moon's mystery is reflection, of course. The moon is that agency in the sky that receives the sunlight and reflects it to the earth. It's not quite as bright as it seems. You can't quite read by the moonlight. Well, unless the letters are very big. But the light that does come from the moon enables us to function at night time for 2 or 3 nights of the month. It's real light and it's strong, but it's soft as well. It's very gentle and it's somewhat magical. There's an association with the moon that awakens within us a sense of mystery and wonder that is not given by the sun, except at dawn and sunset, when the reason why those are special is because the sun is not so strong. So when the moon is at its strength, the strongest time of the moon, the full moon, quite a number of us get quite excited. Yeah, that's really nice to see the full moon in the sky. And maybe we'll do things that we don't normally do. We celebrate the full moon. And of course, in pagan traditions, they did this. So there is this mystery and magic about the moon. And we have to wonder whether that has to do with its quality of being able to reflect light rather than create it alone. There was a Sufi story about a sultan who was wanting to decorate a palace, and he had a passageway, and he invited two groups of people to create a mural each side of the passageway. And on the one side, let's say the Greeks were creating this fantastically beautiful work of art with all their imagery and fruits and palaces and trees, and it's just so lovely and colourful and everything. Whereas on the other side, let's say the Armenians, all they did was hid themselves away from anyone, and they spent all of their time polishing the wall itself. They didn't create any image on the wall. They just polished it and polished it and polished it and polished it until it became a perfect mirror. So when you looked at their wall, you saw a reflection of the wall on the other side, and it was much more beautiful. Very nice story. And we can get a sense of how this is within personality. There are some people who are not fiery or brash or pushing forward in a solar, fiery kind of way. They're subtle and nuanced, and they have finesse, and they respond to situations in a graceful way. And this is rather more indicative of our sense of beauty and harmony, certainly. So what is the mystery of reflection? What does it actually mean on the deepest level? And here we come to one of the major understandings in Sufism and any mystery tradition that is so counterintuitive it's very difficult to teach. And that is that all of this, everything, is a mirror. Everything we see in life is simply a reflection of who we are. We're only ever looking at the moon. We can't see the sun. If the sun is the metaphor for the light itself, the creative force, that life-bringing agency which we call God, we can't look at that. It's too bright. I mean, you can't look at the sun. It's too bright. It will burn your eyes. So we don't. We don't look at the sun. And we don't look at God either. We look at the manifestation of God. In other words, life. And that's all we could ever see. And what version of the life that we're looking at, that we do see, is only ever to do with our attention. What we look at is our choice of attention. If we can master that choice, and it's much more difficult now in the days of social media than it was even 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, because everyone wants your attention, because they turn it into influence, very often through money. Attention is the juice in life, and where we give it is where we give our power and where we claim our power, our influence, our path. That's to do with the focus of attention. But we do also need to think about the quality of attention. If you look at something with sharp, critical eyes, then you'll cut it into pieces, you'll analyze it. But if you look at something with diffuse kind of peripheral vision almost, then it will maintain its whole sense of being, its holistic identity. And I point you to the image of the moon, full moon shining over the ocean in the Aegean or something. It's stunningly beautiful because you can't see the detail. If you were actually close to the moon, you would die for want of air. If you were close to the ocean, you would die for want of being able to swim indefinitely. If you were in some of these places that look beautiful from a distance and you were close up, you might be in danger from animals or robbers. And, you know, everything that you see in that image, that stunningly beautiful image, everything you see is beautiful because of your attitude of perception. If you get close up to anything, beauty disappears. Beauty does not survive analysis. Now, this is also true of our lives. There are times when we have to really analyze what's going on in our life. But these are the times of the magician and other earlier mysteries. When we get to this level of awareness, there's no need for analysis. We know stuff, and we trust that the intuitive inner knowing is more reliable than the powers of mind to analyze for most things. If you want to get the job done, then analysis is helpful. But if you just want to find out what's going on, just to know what's going on, it doesn't do it. Thinking doesn't do it. Because knowledge is an inner experience. If perception is an expression of our inner self, then knowledge of that inner self has to be an inward experience. You could measure your position and success in life and say, I am this, I am that, I own the other. It's not a measure of who you really are. Who you really are is an experience of deep centeredness of being. When there's a crisis, do I calm down in order to deal with it? When there's a mystery, do I find a serene sense of intuitive gnosis, knowledge within me to unpick the mystery, to unfold and unveil the mystery? Do I do that? These are the clues to tell you who you are. And it's to do with reflection. This word reflection has got an ambiguity about it, because whereas when we look at a mirror, for example, and what I'm saying is that life is a mirror. When we look in a mirror, we see the reflection of ourselves. The world is reflecting to us. But also when we put the mind inside and we consider our feelings and our thoughts and our personal experiences, we are said to be in reflection. We're reflecting upon ourselves. And this idea of seeing yourself, perceiving yourself through the eyes of an external agency, like the eyes of another person, for example, then that's reflection. And this awakens within us the awareness of that ability that we have to be reflectors ourselves. The more you reflect, the more you become a reflector. So what are we reflecting? On one level, we are reflecting back to the people who come to us. So if somebody comes strong at you, you need to reflect back strength. Hold your boundaries in place. If they come to you vulnerable and needy, then you need to reflect back softness and compassion. That's how you interact with people, by reflecting their state. If you want to get on in the world, that's what you do anyway. But there's a much deeper thing that we are reflecting, of course. We are the reflection on earth of the divine creative force. We are creators. We are creative. We are aspects of, agencies of, facets of the Creator. There is acting through each and every one of us God consciousness. And our purpose as conscious, aware human beings is to know that that's happening, is to be aware that we are simply reflecting God. As life reflects God, so we reflect life back to God. That's the formula. We're component part of this wonderful experience that we're having, that God is creating creation just for the crack, as they say in Ireland. You know, I mean, if I was God sitting there being omnipotent with nobody to play with, I'd be bored, wouldn't you? So God created creation to have someone to play with. And I think of all the creation myths that there are, this one, which is what Sufism teaches, is the most intuitively obvious. How could the person, the being, the wonderful God that had the capacity to create, how could he not create, or she not create, or it not create? How could it not do what it could do when it's at that level of creativity? It's just so obvious that of course God has to create creation, because it can. You know, and there's the juice in life, is when we actually get feedback, reflection of who we are. And that's what people want. If you are engaged in the work of counselling, for example, you listen, you get a sense of what your client is saying. The best thing to do is just to say, so, what I've heard you say is this. And you simply summarise more concisely than they gave you the information. You summarise that which they've just told you. You reflect back. You recognise them. That is the healing, because people have not been recognised. They have not been given that quality of reflection, because it needs to come with the level of awareness that can scintillate, that can excite. If you actually say to somebody, oh, I see who you are, you're this, and you do it in a positive way and you do it deeply, they will feel excited. By being, they're excited to be who they are when you've reflected back to them that you can see it. That's the power of the moon. And that's the power that we have in the presence of the Creator. We can reflect back by recognizing God. And that is what God finds scintillating. And scintillation is that's what we want. It's excitement, isn't it? And it's enthusiasm, and it's sparkling, nuanced, kind of shimmering light. It's the stuff of magic, scintillation. And we get this through the operation of the moon energy, which is why it's associated with magic. The hair would be symbolised by the moon, wouldn't it? That would be one thing. And dogs and wolves howling at the moon, because people are said to have these kind of mystical, magical, crazy experiences more often on the full moon. So the moon has got this kind of ability to bring us into that state of scintillation. Now, as students of esotericism, we're studying all of this material, the tarot at the moment, Sabian symbols, astrology, Elven Star. We're studying all this material in order to develop a greater awareness. One of the things that really comes to our consciousness when we understand moon energy in this context is that these symbols symbolise their meaning. That's obvious, it's a truism, but it's not much understood. Every symbol is a metaphor for the meaning that it points to. So we could apply that on a serious kind of astrological level. Taurus is fixed earth. Well, no, it's not. Taurus symbolises fixed earth. And we don't even know what earth means. Earth does not mean dirt or soil. Earth means the physicality of form. It's a symbol itself. So Taurus is a symbol for the earth, one aspect of it, but the earth itself is a symbol for something else. The word earth doesn't mean that which you grow vegetables in. It means physicality. But physicality itself, when you look at it on the subatomic level, isn't physical. It's energy. There's space. Form is only space that looks like form when you look down at the deepest level. So even physicality symbolizes something else, which is the meaning behind an expression of energy. Now, I know that's a subtle argument, but just think it through. Everything is a metaphor for meaning, even at the level of physicality itself. So on the level of thought, what we think, a logical argument, an understanding, an analysis, this all symbolizes something. And the end of that line of argument brings us to meaning. Meaning is real. Everything else is symbolic. Life is symbolic of the meaning of who you are. And that's what we're doing in life. We're trying to find out what we mean. And when people ask questions like, who am I? What is my purpose in life? What am I supposed to be doing here? These questions move us in the right direction towards shaping the right question, but they're not the right question. I don't even know what the phrase, who am I, means. Do you? I mean, how do I answer that? I could say my name, I could sort of describe my physical body and my circumstances, but I'm the only one that is that person, so I'm not anyone else. But does that answer the question, who am I, or not anyone else? It doesn't mean anything. It's clever, but it's not meaningful. So the meaning of who you are is reflected to you in your life, and in your thoughts, and in your feelings, and in actually everything, and every possible concept, and every possible behavior and feeling and nuance of involvement. All of that, it's all metaphor. It's the reflection of that deep essential ingredient of beingness, which I'm calling at the moment meaning. And that meaning deepens as you deepen, as your studies of the mysteries and your experiences of them in practice and your guidance to help you understand how to experience them and what you're experiencing and what those experiences can mean according to your decision of choice about what it means. When you're guided like that, you come to this awareness that the only quest that we really have, and the only question that we're really asking of life is, what does it all mean? Now, very many people ask that, what is the meaning of life? Well, the meaning of life is not the meaning of life. It's the meaning of I. What do I mean? So what do you mean by the meaning of life? And here we have the circle is complete now. The meaning of life is to discover the meaning of life. And that sounds so clever and almost foolishly pointless because it doesn't seem to give you anything, but it gives you everything. There is nothing more important than for individuals to decide, to choose, to create, to experience what they are examining as what might be the meaning of life. We're trying to discover the meaning of life in order to discover the meaning of I. What is the meaning of individuality? Is it possible to understand individuality without understanding unity? Can we know who we are without knowing God? Is it possible to understand God without knowing individuality? How are you going to understand what God is if you don't understand your own neurotic biases? You're going to warp the narrative because of what's not perfect within you. How could you do anything else? So how can you know God without knowing yourself? How can you know yourself without knowing God? Because it's part of you. So this riddle, it's not a riddle, it's a paradox, is what we're all about. And that's the paradox that's studied in the serious sort of spiritual studies behind all the mysteries. And I think the moon is getting very, very close to showing you how to unravel this paradox. the meaning of life in the end is the best choice you can make. And our suggestion in this work is that it's going to express freedom. I don't need to explain why. It's just so obvious. I was born to be free, and anyone that stops me doing exactly what I want when I want to do it, they need to have a very good reason. It doesn't feel right for me to have any imperfection in my freedom. That's self-evident to me. I need to evolve. Once again, how could I not? I'm a living being. Living beings grow. If it's not growing, it's not alive. Of course I'm evolving. I'm creative. Well, I haven't met anybody else that agrees with me yet about the exact meaning of life or even the structure of it. I'm therefore uniquely making up the perception of it, and I can't think about doing it any differently ever, nor would I want to. And I enjoy making things up my way anyway. This is an expression of my freedom and evolution. So that's why we're using freedom, evolution, and creativity as a little Holy Trinity to give us vernacular clues, words that lead us to concepts. And at the end of this study, that's it, that's what it means, that's what I mean. Then you've unified these three principles. You've unified yourself as self with meaning, and you've unified your relationship with unity. And that's the unity point in the Trinity teachings. And the moon takes us very close into this mystery.